Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Thank you.
So thank you again for coming out and spending time with us. And
yeah, happy to.
Some insight about you. So let's get started and talk about a little bit of your background, like where were you born, where did you grow up, kind of give us a little background about you.
Sure, yeah. My wife always says I'm a Texan because I was born in Dallas, but I only lived there. I didn't even get to 1 year old there. So I grew up all over the place. Most of my adult life was in Southern California, but I lived in Chicago and then Pennsylvania and then Northern California, then Texas again, and then I moved out here. I had 3 years of high school, my last 3 years of high school at Corona Del Mar here in Orange County, where I met my wife, actually. We're high school sweethearts.
Oh, wow.
And then I went to OCC for 2 years, and whenever I see OCC on a resume, I hire them. Yeah, I love junior college. I think it's terrific. And then I went to Boston University and got an undergraduate business degree. And the way I picked that school is I swam all through high school, and I swam in college, and I looked at U.S. News and World Report what the top 50 business schools were, and that was in there, and I called the coach, found out my times were fast enough to be on the team, and applied to go there, not knowing anyone in Boston or anything about the state, had never been there, and went there for 2 years. And that's where I got the cancer, was my senior year at school there, which taught me a lot about life, and because of the cancer, I actually didn't have a huge chance to interview a lot. I wanted to be a stockbroker or something in the financial markets, and when I interviewed, they had all these training programs that would last years, and I didn't know if I was going to have to do chemo, so I couldn't really commit to those. So I ended up just coming back and trying to find a job here in Southern California, and that's kind of how I got into what I got into and how everything launched.
And what was your first company?
So my first company was actually a startup that my dad had been involved in called Schoolhouse Christmas Trees. And what we did was, well, the first thing I ever did was something called Holiday Highlights, putting lights on people's houses at Christmas. I did that with my brother. I invested, and he fired me after the second year, which was awesome. But I learned a lot in that business. Actually, some stuff happened with there that taught me some big lessons on the guy that I was in business with on what not to do in business. I stayed there about 1.5 years, and then I kind of moved on. But those were really fun kind of learning experiences. And I had coached a lot. I had coached a lot of little kids' swim teams. Mesa Verde Country Club, I was the head coach for like 3 years for the swim team. And I had grown it. I was into growing whatever I did. I grew it from like 20 kids up to a 90-kid team. And I had watched my boss at the time had 5 or 6 pools, Balboa Bay Club and Mesa Verde and all that stuff. And he was literally making probably $150,000 to $200,000 a summer running kids' swim teams by the way he was doing lessons. And it taught me a super important lesson. People always say, follow your heart, do what you have passion for. It's like, oh, well, I want to be a coach, but there's no money in coaching. Turns out if you're creative and you give it a lot of thought, there's ways to make money doing anything. And that was probably one of the most important lessons I learned early on, was if you do come at the market from a different angle, there are a lot of ways to be successful.
Is there something or someone that influenced you to become an entrepreneur? Like, was there something that triggered you?
Yeah, I mean, the easy answer on that one is my dad was an entrepreneur, and I had seen him rise and fall multiple times, at times doing well, at times kind of in bankruptcy, and kind of the roller coaster of coming back from that. And eventually he did end up pretty successful. But I actually gave a speech, I think, that's on Vimeo, where I talked about 2 things. I talked about how the cancer affected my life and not really having a fear of failure. But when I was 11 or 12, I had an experience. My parents had been divorced after some hard financial times. They got divorced. And there was a Christmas where I was very used to at Christmas. I come from a family of 4 kids. And we were used to getting a lot of toys and a lot of stuff, bikes under the trail, that stuff, every single year. And after the bankruptcy and the divorce and all these things, we had one Christmas where the best my mom could do was buy each of us this little jukebox. And I don't know how many young people are in here, but that's something you could put like a tape cassette in, right? And you would like carry it on your shoulder at the swim meets, and it would be all awesome. And that was the only present we got that year. And my older sister freaked out. She freaked out, and she's like, I can't believe this is all we're getting. how could this be possible? Like, we've come from all this and now we have nothing. We were getting like evicted out of the place we were renting and stuff. And she was so distraught, and my mom just sat down on the ground and started crying. Because her whole purpose in life was basically to try to provide for her kids. And my sister, not her fault, I mean, I was 11, she was 13, really freaked out on her. And what I realized in that moment was, you know, money can't cause happiness, but not having money can cause a tremendous amount of unhappiness and difficulty in life. And it was probably at that moment that I decided that that would never happen to me. And you know, there was no way at that age that you could kind of save your mom or take care of your family because you couldn't provide at that age. But I decided that once I could, I would, and that would never happen to me. So it wasn't so much I was dying to be an entrepreneur as I was dying to secure the people I cared about. Sorry, I know that's a long answer.
Yeah, no, great answer. How did you get the idea for Trace3? Like, how did that even come about?
So I had a company previous to Trace3 called TechFuel that I ran into the dirt, and we had to file bankruptcy. It was an awesome failure. It was like really, ran up to like 23, 24 million in sales, and then it failed. The reason that it failed is I had tried to change it from being a very simple business into a software company, and I learned a lot of lessons in doing that. And when that failed, I realized that the resale business that TechFuel had started as was a pretty simple business, and I understood that business, but I kind of wanted to have a company I could take public, so I switched it to software. So when that went bankrupt in my first year of marriage, I took a year to get back on my feet, taking a sales position in Orange County, and I decided that I would start a business that I absolutely knew how to run, which was, it's called a VAR business, a value-added reseller. I decided that I would start that business and I would stick to that and I would just go for that. And I had two guys that came with me from my previous failure at TechFuel, and they made me swear in blood that I would do nothing but the VAR business and wouldn't try to have these grandiose plans to go public. And we started it, and the Trace3, the name was, I can trace back 3 generations of entrepreneurs, myself and then my father and then my grandfather. That's where the name came from. But it started as a very simple business. I wrote playbooks for the business on exactly what the rules would be on this one. No personal guarantees on this one. I don't know how many of you sign personal guarantees, but don't sign personal guarantees. You don't have to. They'll tell you you have to, but you do not have to. And when my first one failed, I found out that I had signed a personal guarantee on the Dell leases. And we ended up, me and my 2 other founders ended up, once the business had scaled to over 200 people with all kinds of laptops and servers and all that stuff, and we ended up with personal guarantees and debt that almost put all of us in personal bankruptcy. We luckily avoided that, and if any of you have trouble with that, I can teach you how to negotiate out of that. But we set up a bunch of rules, we wrote them down, and we launched Trace3 with the idea that we would start it with $100. We would go to our clients and talk to our clients about what they saw as valuable. We would never take money or debt for speed. We would just build it out of the value we could provide for the clients. So we never took any outside funding to build that business, and really were pretty wildly successful from the start in that one by just focusing on the clients. And it was a business we knew how to do. We had a lot of contacts for it.
And that started in 2000?
2002.
Okay.
Yeah, is when that started.
I recently read an article that you participated in for Forbes, that you shared some of your ideas on how, kind of the playbook of how you took $100 and turned it into $100 million.
Yeah.
And a couple of the things that stood out to me, I thought maybe would be good to talk about, was you talk about ask for money, not goodwill.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Or how can you share that with us?
So one of the things you have to do is you have to get uncomfortable as an entrepreneur. It's really easy to sit on a whiteboard and plan, or sit in Excel and do models and plan. What you have to do is you have to go out to your potential clients and you have to ask them for orders. And most of the time they'll be your friends, right? It'll be your friends that you'll be going to, maybe you're working at a company and you go to current clients and say, hey, I'm going to start my own thing. If I do it, will you give me orders? And this is what the product looks like. And most of the time, the people that really like you will say yes. And if you stop there, I can almost guarantee your business will fail. After they say yes, you say, okay, I'm going to send you a dummy quote. I want you to get it through purchasing and get me an order. And then they're going to lean forward and they go, well, my company is not really picking up new vendors right now. We have to get through legal. That's going to be kind of complicated. If you wait till after you start your business to have that really difficult conversation, then you've made a huge mistake. So there is goodwill where your friends will want to help you, but you need to test that and see, is there real value in this product? When I started Pop, which is the company I'm working on now, I actually went out to clients, and it was kind of hysterical the way it worked, at least to me, that it happened this way. I said, look, I know we have a relationship. I know you see value in what I'm doing at Trace3. I have a new idea that came to me from clients, and I don't want to do it. I literally do not want to do it. I don't have time to do it, but every night I go to bed, and I'm staring at the ceiling, and I'm thinking, my gosh, this might be the best idea anyone has ever given me. I'm going to tell you what it is, and I'd like you to give me 5 reasons why I can't do it. At the end of the conversation, after 5 minutes, they're like, Hayes, I think you have to do that. And I was like, okay, I need you to give me $10,000 to develop it. And out of the first 3 meetings, 2 of them gave me $10,000. And I was like, crap, I guess I better do this. But that's not normally what you do. Normally what you do is you go out and you try to convince people about how good your idea is. If you actually ask them to tell you why it's bad or why you shouldn't do it, you might have a much better chance of getting a very real conversation about if you have real value or not. You can't trust your friends to start a business. You got to go to people that are going to make you uncomfortable, and you have to ask them really hard questions and ask for money. You don't want to put your family on the line and then ask for the money. Do it beforehand.
Another topic that you talked about was understanding the importance of the first hires of a company. Can you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, an entrepreneur, normally what I learned earlier is I would hire people that I was smarter than. I would hire people that I had to help them with their job a lot. And I realized when you're focusing on scaling a business, what you want to be doing as an entrepreneur is running absolutely as fast as you can on your route to market and hope that everybody's running behind you trying to pass you. If you have a situation where everyone behind you is tripping and you have to stop and you have to go tie their shoes and you have to help them, it's going to be really difficult to scale your business. It doesn't mean that it won't work. It just means that your opportunity is going to be very limited. I've also found that A players attract A players. B players make A players quit. C players make A players want to kill themselves, right? And so if you're starting a business that is a people business, let's say you have a consulting business or something that's going to be based on the people, you look at your best guy in the company. Go out and look at your best person in the company, and then look at the 2 seats next to him or her. Are those people that if that guy or girl went on vacation, they could carry the ball? And if the answer is no, then odds are when a recruiter calls that guy, they're going to leave. So you have to really look at the caliber of people you're bringing on in the early days, and you're going to have this tendency to want to do their job for them because you want your company to succeed so badly, right, that you would do anything to make it succeed. I now am experienced enough and maybe comfortable enough in the people that I've got. I actually throw them to the wolves way sooner than I should. I don't know how many of you have read Lean Startup and how it talks about minimum viable products. Well, you can do that to people too. Before they're ready to do calls, just when you have a client call, just tell them you got a flat tire and you can't make it. Call in the background and listen to how they do, and then coach the hell out of them when you're done. The only way they're going to learn is to be put out there and to do it. And hopefully you've got a good enough group in your core that when you start, they don't even need that. But I think that's a huge, huge part of it. If you have to carry everybody with you, you've got no chance. I started writing what I call the playbook, and the purpose of the playbook was to explain why we had to do what we had to do. And in that very first playbook, I talked about what if a large company came and bought a competitor. I talked about if we have a lifestyle organization, what kind of talent are we going to attract? I don't know if any of you have ever worked for those companies where the owner starts vacationing all the time, maybe gets into NASCAR racing, maybe gets into something that has nothing to do with the business, and you see him start spending money that the business is creating on things that don't drive more business. Players will not work for a company like that. They won't stay at a company like that because they don't want ceilings, they don't want to be capped, they want to have an insane opportunity. So the playbooks really started as this way to convince my current team why we needed to do what we needed to do. But what they became is they became these cultural artifacts that said, hey, in 2006, when we wrote the first one, this is what was important to us. This is what our value system was: relevance to the market, striving for greatness, impacting the markets we chose to innovate. All of those things were kind of in those initial books. And then they just carried forward and forward, and they became the most incredible recruiting tools we ever knew. I hire someone in 2012, I hand that person all the books back to 2006, and they know why at every stage in the business we've done what we've done. And I told my wife that I was nuts when I wrote the first one, because in the first book I also said, this is exactly how I started Trace3. This is how I got the credit lines. This is how I've scaled the business. This is how I interview. This is how I talk to my partners. And I said, if you want, you can take it and start your own business. And my wife was like, well, if you do that, everyone's going to splinter off and start their own company. And I said, yeah, but if they don't, if I'm that open with them and they don't, and now I've accelerated them with everything I know about running this business, and they could almost operate independently as franchises, how fast could we go? And in 12 years, we've had one rep quit the company ever. And the reason we've scaled so fast, I wrote them, and then people started writing them for their teams, and it became this big part of the business of, if people understand why they're doing what they're doing, they will, jump as high as they can for you. If they just feel like they're getting ordered around and they don't understand why, it's never going to scale as fast as you want it to. So it takes a lot of time. That one probably took me 2.5 months to write, and that one was actually, it's called Secure and Create. That one was specifically about how you can do multiple things if you'll leverage and let go and find the right leaders for your businesses and create. I actually have a winery as well. And I have all these things that I shouldn't have at this point, but it's because I've really leveraged and pushed down and let go. And this book was an example to my people that are running $20 or $30 million businesses at Trace3 that you can do the same thing, but it's gonna force you to give up control and really trust people and explain your why thoroughly to them so that they'll follow you.
What has been your biggest failure?
So my biggest failure was probably TechFuel and switching from that value-added reseller to what was called a portal ASP. At the time, it was in late '99. And it was really, when you get to that, you could say it's that company, but when you get to the bottom of it, I just didn't realize how important it is that clients have to lead the way. I was very much, I had my CFO at the time was one of my best friends. I just went to dinner with him last night, Adriel Lars. He was the CFO of TechFuel. Before that, he was at Disney, he was at Morgan Stanley. After that, he went and was the CFO of 3PAR and sold it for $2.2 billion to HP. Now he's the CFO of Lookout. I am the one blip on his resume of total loserdom. That is really sad, but Adriel went to Stanford, I went to OCC, right? And I had met him in Texas, the 1 year I lived in Texas, and he got all these Carnegie Mellon guys, all these Stanford guys, all these MIT guys to join and write the code for this company I did, TechFuel, for this new product. And I was like, my God, these people are geniuses. And I had a kid that graduated from 17 years old, graduated from Stanford, and the stuff that he would put in a PowerPoint or on a whiteboard was like, hallelujah. So instead of going to clients and saying, hey, do you want to buy this product? I was just worshiping these programmers thinking these guys are going to create, this is going to be insane. And I could raise money with them, no problem. They were just so incredible. And I never went out and really took that lean startup approach and really got a lot of value for the product from the clients. We built a B2C product, a business to consumer. And right in the late '99, when that market fell apart, I had no backup plan because I didn't have a client base of focus groups that I was working on. So really the biggest failure was the fact that I allowed myself to kind of start believing the hype of the talent on the team and letting them guide the product instead of rapidly iterating and letting the client drive the product. So that was probably it. And I am praying I've learned enough from that.
If you could give one piece of advice to an entrepreneur today, what would that be?
You have to just get really uncomfortable. If you ever, as an entrepreneur, are feeling really comfortable, you are probably totally screwing up. Truthfully. You have to go out and you have to be talking to clients. You have to be pushing forward. Two things are going to make you uncomfortable: yourself or the market. And I would always rather it was me. So I talk about these playbooks and the why, but what the playbooks also are is my dad was a turnaround entrepreneur, and he turned around Western medical centers here and Parkview out. He did hospitals. When they're in bankruptcy, he'd turn them around. And he'd always tell me, when you go do a turnaround, one of the first things you do is you go and interview everyone, because the people in the business know more than anyone else how to fix it. But oftentimes, management just gets so far away from that they screw it all up. So he interviews all of them, and then he'll usually have to lay off 20 or 30%. And I was like, gosh, Dad, isn't that just brutal? He's like, wouldn't it be more brutal to lay them all off? Aren't I saving 60 or 70% of the jobs rather than looking at it that way? So with these playbooks, what I do is I'll write them kind of in a 3-year plan. I'll figure out what my end state is that I'm shooting for in 3 years, figure out why that's important, explain that why very well, and then step backwards and say, in this first year, this is what we need to do. And this is why it would be really important. So if everybody can get on board with that, then we have a chance at long-term success here. The playbooks become a huge part of this long-term planning, a huge part of people getting bought into what's called like moonshot goals, accomplishing the moonshot goal by taking little steps along the way and getting buy-in for that. What was the original question? I forgot. I get
one piece of advice that you give the entrepreneurs.
Oh yeah, so get uncomfortable, get really uncomfortable, and explain your why, and just try to lift people up in the organization as much as you can. That's 3 pieces of advice.
Do you have a personal mission statement that you follow?
Yeah, it really is to lift others up and treat people the way you'd want to be treated. My goal, when I started a company, is really like, would I work at that company? Would I work for that CEO? Would I work for that leadership style? If it's not transparent, I couldn't do it. If they're hiding things from me, I couldn't do it. If it's a lifestyle company, I couldn't do it. So I just try to build a company that I would want to work for. And whenever a boss has your interests first, and is trying to lift you up and giving you the credit and really encouraging you. Now, it's important that they share the risk with you. You don't want, just for them to give you all the credit when you didn't do it. But people that lift you up and help you grow, that's where I'd want to be. So if you're that type of an entrepreneur, you'll attract good talent.
You recently announced on your blog, which I happened to read, that you were stepping down as CEO of Trace3 and starting a company, that you started this in 2002, but that you had something new that you were starting, which is Pop, I believe. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about that transition and maybe how you came to decide to do that?
Yeah, so I think there's different types of companies that you're maybe good at running, and maybe all of you are those perfect people that can, man, I'm great 0 to 100 million, or I'm great 300 million, or 300 million to $1 billion, or then there's these operators that come in and can take companies from 2 billion to 10 billion, and some entrepreneurs can do it all, right? They surround themselves with a lot of talent. I had Trace3 for 12 years. When it hit 100 million, was really probably the most fun time ever. Just doing that 3-year plan, we said we'd go 23, 43, 74, 100, and we went 23, 43, 74, 100. And that was just neat, to call backboard like that and then do it. And then in 2 years, we went from 100 million to 300 million. And literally everything in the organization broke. When you grow that fast, all your systems break, your management team that was great at 50 million, now is like, gosh, I got 20 direct reports, I don't know how to deal with this. So we found a company, I don't know how many of you have read like Patrick Lencioni. He wrote 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. If you haven't read him, you should read him. He wrote a book called The Advantage. I got handed to it by one of the smartest guys on my team. And it's a book about culture and about explaining the why. And about, I'm like, why do I need that? I write playbooks. Like, look how great the company is. And at 80 pages into that book, I realized I was doing absolutely everything wrong. Like, so much wrong. Running a $300 million business is so different than running a smaller business. And I was screwing so much up. We did a table group offsite. Lencioni has a company called the Table Group. They do 2-day offsites for, Verizon, Coca-Cola, Comcast, all these huge companies. And here's little Trace3. We go and we do this offsite for 2 days. The first day was one of the worst experiences of my life, because they go around a room and everybody tells you what an idiot you are. And then on the second day, you set your strategic objectives and you learn that if you can have conflict in the room and everybody can kill each other in that room as a one executive team, and then you come to resolution about what you're going to do, and then your leaders hold each other accountable, not where the CEO has to hold you accountable, but the leaders will hold each other accountable, then the leader will actually get all this capacity back to go and work on other stuff. We do this 2-day offsite. Second day is the best day of my entire career, including the day we hit 100 million, which was really cool. This was better. My president and my VP of services quit within 2 weeks of the offsite. Because you get that kind of clarity. Like, I'm in or I'm not in, right? And my team gels after that. We go from 300 million to 420 million in 1 year with 12% less headcount than the year before. And for my business, that should not be possible. So what Pop does, my new startup, that I stepped down from CEO at Trace3 to be the full-time CEO at Pop, what it does is it actually drives engagement with the masses now from 20% up to 80%. Table Group got so interested in it that they are now introing us to their client base. What the tool does is it allows you to have a one-on-one conversation with thousands of people, and then at the end of that conversation, take action. So one of my favorite things that we did, a company called VF Inc., it's Vanity Fair, they did a session, and the CEO said, processes, we've grown fast, the processes, I'd love to simplify them. I know as we grow, you'd love to just constantly look at how to refine that, how to get better, how to lighten the load on people. If you had an easy button, you know the Staples commercials, the easy buttons? If you had an easy button in the company, what would your easy button do? And it was that simple. So for 2 days, everybody downloads Pop on their phone, the Pop-in app, and they put in what their easy button would do. And everybody can see everybody else's ideas. They vote, this one's good, and as it votes and it gets good votes, likes, it rises to the top. At the end of 2 days, the CEO says, I can tell this one got 90 votes, this one got 100 votes. These are the top 3 things that if we simplified these, it would make your life easier. Thank you for doing that. I'm going to implement that, and I want you all to know as employees, you're relevant to our strategy. You're important to our success, and your feedback is crucial, so thank you for doing this. So tell me this, what if he did not get a single idea from that session that he didn't already know? He just went to a strategic offsite. He comes up with those exact 3 same things and then tries to roll them out to the org. What would the engagement around those ideas be if they were change initiatives? Maybe 30%, maybe 35%. But when he does the session and every person in the company gives their feedback and they say, these are my ideas, and then he implements their ideas, now what's the engagement going to be? So the tool solves problems, but at the same time, it gets everybody engaged. Then we started to realize you could do that with your clients too. Your R&D team could pick your top 10 clients, do a session with both, say, hey, our roadmap's 50% figured out. Can you give us the other 50% of features you'd love to see in the product? When that product comes out, what do you think those clients are going to do with it? They're going to buy it. So we've got a great list of clients that's going from that. That started to see so much success. And then with what Trace3 is doing around kind of showing clients the future of tech and then helping them with their current data centers, we realized that engagement piece to get to cloud and big data and all these technology things that are coming, the organizational health piece is going to be the hardest. So there's a lot of synergy between Trace3 and Pop and how that's working. So I about 8 or 9 months ago, well, 2 years ago, I found the president, and I hired him as my VP of sales. I promoted him to president about a year into that. And then he and I both recruited a guy to come on to be the CEO, but we made him come on and learn the business for about 8 or 9 months before we promoted him. But the succession plan started about 2 years ago. And I'm still on the executive team at Trace3, and I still help with strategy and with some of the playbook type stuff. But the guys I have running it now and the executive team I have running it with the Table Group's help is pretty extraordinary. So I'm super excited. I have this wild dream that I could be like Richard Branson and just have 10 companies that all are killer. And you know, when he tried to start that company to compete against Coke and he drove that tank down, I think Wall Street or something like that, massive failure. Nobody remembers that. All they remember is, all his successes. So I don't worry much about the failures, but I'd love to have 5 or 6 companies that all kind of complement each other and help really have companies achieve whatever they want to achieve through engagement and consulting and technology and stuff around that I have a lot of passion for. So I realized I'm a good startup guy. I'm an okay 300 million guy. There's probably people that can do that a lot better, and I think the team I put in place can do that. So I'm kind of excited and back in my sweet spot.
Nice. Exciting times.
Yeah, thank you.
So what's next for you? You're going to obviously work full-time with Pop.
Yeah.
That's your focus, and maybe take some time to do some other things.
Yeah, I have 4 kids, and I really thought that stepping down as CEO of Trace3, life would get a little easier. But I mean, my God, and you guys probably all know this, the stress of being an entrepreneur is insane. I had a guy that started a company that he raised $3 billion from 17 banks to start this company, and then he eventually sold it to Wells Fargo. And you get kind of dreamy looking at people like that. You're like, what's that like? That's so incredible, right? And he's like, do you want to know what it's like? Once a week, every week, since founding the company to selling it, I would walk into the bathroom, take a shower, and at one time that week I would throw up. Because the stress of being an entrepreneur is that insane, especially when you raise that much money and do all those things. So, I would say that driving engagement in organizations is my goal. That's the next thing for me. But the stress of running a startup again and having a burn rate and all of those things while you're not profitable, it's exciting to me, at the same time very stressful and totally invigorating. So I love doing it, but it is not relaxing. It's not like, wow, you get to chill out now. It is definitely stressful, but I think if you're the kind of person that thrives on that, that's great. And for anybody that's watching this that's like, gosh, I'd love to be an entrepreneur. If you can't handle, like this guy talked about throwing up in the shower once a week kind of a thing, because it's just that stressful at times, because macro things will happen in the market, like the crash in 2009 that shut down my first company. You can't control that. I wrote playbooks to try to get out of the way of that, like doing a turnaround 3 years in advance with all these playbooks, but you still can't control everything. So you got to have the stomach for it, you got to have the tolerance for it, and you got to surround yourself with, hopefully mentors that can help you when you're, having your anxiety attacks. But I think this is probably what I'll do forever. I did talk to my wife, and I was like, hey, if Pop doesn't work, I'm out of a job. Like TechFuel kicked me, I'm out. I kicked myself out. What do you think about me hanging out, at home? And she put her hand on my head. She's like, honey, I think it's really important that you show the kids that you go to work. Yeah, so I don't think I'm going to be staying home anytime soon.
Well, we wish you the best of
Thank
luck.
you.
We're excited to see all the new things that you're going to be, innovating and coming up with. So, want to thank him for being part of Startup Grind. So let's give him a big round of applause.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.